When you think about the ability to take down what we would call, in this example, non-factual information, right? Then it becomes a question of who's deciding what the facts are. And again, this kind of goes to the danger, because if there's, again, a criticism of your organization or a criticism of the government that you're under, if they decide they don't like that and they decide that what you said is non-factual, even though perhaps you've seen a video and you've seen with your own eyes what is factual, then their ability to make those decisions rather than your own means that they would have the ability to censor you, and it would, again, have the opposite effect. So you might be thinking, okay, well then what does this mean? How do I know what's truth is out there? Well, that is the business we're in here at Sapient Insights Group.
Welcome to the HR Huddle podcast, presented by Sapient Insights Group, the ultimate resource for all things HR. It's time to get in the huddle.
Welcome to Spilling the Tea on HR Tech, where we focus on the hottest HR tech news everyone needs to know to be in the know. We break down the news of the week and help you make sense of what it means for our industry and how it can impact your organization. We are recording today already. We're back in January, guys, and now it's 2026. It's going to take me a while to keep remembering to say that, but we're bringing you all the news you can use this week. I'm your host, Stacey Harris, Chief Research Officer and Managing Partner for Sapient Insights Group, a research and advisory firm if you haven't worked with us in the past. And joining me today is my co-host, Cliff Stevenson, Director of Research and Principal Analyst for Sapient Insights Group. Cliff, welcome to the show today. I'm joining from around the world, so we're crossing our fingers. All of the things hold good. I'm in Bali for work events, not for vacation yet, but getting a chance to enjoy the beautiful culture and space out here. So it's almost midnight my time, and you're still on the other side of the world, but you're joining me here soon, but at another island, right? So we're going to be
That's
island
right. Yeah. Well, it'll be really wild. We'll both be in the Indian Ocean. Well, hopefully not in the ocean, although you did have there's a storm going through, a typhoon that you got some of the effects of, that's moving towards Mauritius, where I will be off the coast of Madagascar. If you didn't know where Mauritius was, neither did I until I found I was going there. I didn't even know how to pronounce it. I will be there on vacation, although we'll be full internet, be able to monitor everything. We'll still have some days of work. So if you're trying to reach me, when you get this, I'll still be over there. As you're listening, if you are listening as part of your New Year's resolution and this is your first show, welcome. We love to have you.
It's going to be a quick conversation today because it feels like this is the first of the year, Cliff, and we should be sort of slowly creeping into it. And that is not what happened. I got right back from my first visiting my granddaughter in Hawaii, where she lives. On the 5th, you and I went right into our first research teams meeting, which I'm hoping to get a post out about, but sometimes people will see before this drops next week. And we spent 4 amazing days with our team members talking about what we're doing on the research side. And then I jumped on a plane on Saturday morning and headed around the world. And I've been here for the last 4 days. Like you said, you're getting ready to head right out and do the same thing. And the news and the information, it hasn't really slowed down or stopped at all, right?
No, not at all. It's interesting because I think we were talking about it in that team meeting that our usual work really, really picks up before HR Tech as we're writing the report, which has gotten bigger every year. It's up to 380 pages this year, 10,000 participants, over 4,600 organizations. You can buy it online right now. And so we usually say, okay, we're putting in 90 to 100-hour weeks during that time. But come January, we'll have some time to, rest and reflect. And that's not the case. And it seems that that's true for everyone because we're seeing quite a bit of news. It won't be as hectic as it was getting towards the end of 2025, but still quite a lot of mergers and acquisitions and some cool people news, a lot of really interesting stuff. But while we were talking about the paper, speaking of it being a new year, and this is a good way to remember it's 2026, we're going to have the new one coming out soon, at least a new survey.
New survey, yeah. So the date, does Tammy have the date? Did we announce that already for the date?
We certainly do.
In April for our distributors, and then it's going to go out. What the public date will be?
So the distributor launch will be April 15th. So if you normally receive the survey through one of our distribution partners. By the way, thank you, distribution partners. You'll receive that on the 15th. Otherwise, the public launch will be April 29th. So look for that. If you haven't seen it by then, please reach out to us directly and we'll make sure you take it. I know we say this all the time. We cannot do this without you. We respect each and every individual one of you that takes it so much. And again, it can seem like, oh, that many respondents. It can't possibly be that you really hear from every one of us individually. We do, because what will happen is we're going to see your comment, for instance, is going to end up one day in front of the decision makers at these companies, because they'll say, can we see the comments for anyone that was using our learning platform in the United States that works at a small business? And by doing that, all of a sudden that 10,000 becomes, okay, here are these 50 comments. And they're pouring over theirs, and they're looking at that, as a gospel. So really, your voice matters. It's not just a cliche.
It really does. And so, it's funny because part of what I'm here in Bali is I'm doing an international sales kickoff for one of our clients. And I say that in the sense that it is a vendor who is listening to what you're saying. And part of what we do at sales kickoffs is, you might kind of like, well, what do we do at a sales kickoff? And a lot of times, the vendors are trying to get to their sales teams what is happening in the market, how they're being positioned in the market, and what the customers are saying, so they can have a conversation with them that makes sense, right? And then at the same time, we oftentimes get a chance to talk to the executive teams while we're at these events and share the same data that you talked about. So in this particular batch, we're doing an international one. So I was able to pull all of our data from Europe and all of our data from Asia Pacific and share a little bit about what's happening globally in this market, and particularly for this organization's clients, and how they can support some of the work that they're doing on the sales side. I really, I love the idea that, in some cases that we're able to share this information in places, like you said, where oftentimes wouldn't get to at the levels it wouldn't get to. But more importantly, I think it also means that we're giving a chance for the market to see what really is happening beyond the hype, right? Like, I think, I feel for the sales guys out in the market right now, because everybody's pushing AI. And so every door they knock on, if they're pushing AI and the competitor's pushing AI and somebody else is talking to them is pushing AI, and the buyers are like, I don't want to hear AI one more time, which we have a particular quote in our research that is exactly that language. I don't want to hear AI one more time, right? That gives them a sense of how they should be thinking a little bit about the conversations, because they need to know when they've hit too much hype in an area, or those kind of things, right? And so those are some of the conversations that we have at events like this, just so that everybody, we're all working in this. We're all trying to get the most out of this market, and we want to be able to be treated with, hey, you understand what challenges I'm having, and you're also not coming at me with a lot of, hype and shtick and those kind of things. And so real good conversations at events like this. We're going to be doing a lot of other traveling, though, coming up, Cliff. Besides you going out to Mauritius, what's our next event besides that? We've got, I think, some deep dives that we're doing in California with another client, where we're, again, doing some more data sets with their executives. Any events will people... Yep, that's next month.
February 16th to 21st, Stacey. You'll be in Pleasanton, California. So if you want to reach out to Stacey, she'll be there. Both Stacey and I will both be in Scottsdale, Arizona with iSolve. That'll be March 9th through the 11th. Then I will be in Philly the night of the 11th and all day on the 12th with Phenom. So that'll be very...
And that's their customer event, right? As well as their analyst event, correct?
That's right. That's quite a large one. You can take a look at that, Phenom people, find out online. Qualtrics. Tammy will be out for the Qualtrics event in Vegas.
I don't Vegas this year. I think it's in Seattle, I want to say.
Seattle, that's right. It is in Seattle. Great memory. March 16th to the 20th. At that same date, Stacey and I will, or one of us, will probably be at Unleash America, the larger event. That will be in Vegas. Stacey will be in Raleigh at the very end of that time period at March 20th. Towards the end of Unleash, probably doing the same thing like I was doing with iSolved and Phenom, jumping from one to the other, because that's what we do. And then, Stacey, you will probably be at Transform, or will be at Transform.
I will be at Transform, yeah. And I do want to highlight the conversation in Raleigh. So so anybody who's a client of ours or anybody who works with us knows that every Christmas we give out wonderful little packages from 321 Coffee, and they are an amazing organization that supports
with developmental disabilities.
I was looking for the words because again, it's almost midnight, guys. Give me a chance.
Yeah, no problem at all. I also do a lot of work with Best Buddies International. So, and the two of them have worked together as well. So yes, it's a really powerful organization with a really great mission, set of values, as well as incredible coffee, which is, I think, pretty funny when we send those out. A lot of the clients are like, wow, what great coffee, and don't even realize it. Not only that they have such a wonderful and pure mission as well.
Yeah, and we actually sponsor their event generally, and so we're going to be there probably doing some presentations and talking to them about what we could do. And so it's one of those things. It's local here to the Raleigh area where I live, which is really something that's important to us, is that we're also supporting our local organizations, and so we'll be doing that. But then, yes, I'll be hopping back on a plane, heading out to Transform to do some lunch and learns and a couple other things out at the Transform conference. This will be my first time at the Transform conference, so I'm actually very excited about this. We're going to get a chance to see some new customers out there and talk to some new organizations. It is Transform HR. So if you haven't been to that event before, let us know. We can let you know how we can catch up while we're there. And then I think after that, we're going to be on the road quite a bit, but we haven't got all of our schedules worked out, right, Cliff?
Yeah, Q2, we do know some of the dates, and we'll continue to report on that in this one. But for the first quarter, that's where we should be, barring anything too last minute, although I don't know exactly where it would get put into the schedule.
Yeah, I was like, if you have an event, as we always tell people, and you either need us to be at it or you're wanting to connect up with us and you want to know if we'll be there, just ping us and let us know. Cliff and I can both be caught up on LinkedIn, send us an email, or go to the info@sapientinsights.com and ask them. All of those ways are easy ways to reach us. But we know that part of the conversation we're having with the market right now is in person always feels like it's a lot. It's a heavy lift, but practitioners who we talk with on a regular basis who are out there listening to this as well, that face-to-face makes such a difference. And so we're really trying this year to make sure we're out there in the field talking to everyone as much as we can. With all the stuff going on online, with all the fake videos, and can you trust what you're seeing, I think the in-person is going to become really important as we move through the next couple of years for a little while, right?
Absolutely. We've seen quite a bit of swings in our own research, in fact, of both, just straight up stats about who's working from home, but also the sort of benefits that are offered and, what people are looking at and using. So we understand that there are those needs. And that's one of the things that's pretty interesting. I feel like because it's a new year, I'm assuming that there's some people that don't know us or don't know our research that well. So, but just in case, we do know our listenership and viewership, because we're also on YouTube. In fact, I've got a sort of Festive Island shirt. You can see Stacey's. I think it's fairly kind of looks a little Indonesian there.
It is the hotel room I should say the room that I'm in. It's not a hotel. It's more like a village that we're in. And it's a gorgeous area out here. I mean, like I said, I got to watch the storms come through today and palm the trees and I got the ocean view, and as I was sitting out having our evening tea, and yeah, it's very, very tropical. It's been a while since I've been in an environment that's quite this lush and gorgeous, and so those on YouTube will get to see a little bit of that in the background, I guess. Yeah. Not exactly, but
it definitely looks great. Yeah. Although I do have a copy of Stacey's book and mine, so better. But what I was saying is that it seems if you hear us talking about this survey, yes, it's massive, but all the examples we gave are sort of looking back, right? Here's the comments of what people have said. Here's what they think. But that's not all that we have. By having this large data set, we're also able to look forward at things like that. Like, what are the trends? What is separating the hype from what people are wanting and what they're going to want? What are the effects of that? Both Stacey and I come as traditional analysts, but also as practitioners. And we're always trying to think of how is this useful to people in both setting, predictions. And then we're do an honest look every year too of were our predictions right based on what we see in the trends in the data, right? Not just sort of spitballing and seeing if we're right, but trying to make honest assessments from the data based on our own knowledge as practitioners. So if that's something of interest to you, and also if you are a longtime knower of our survey and been with us for a long time, if there's something that you aren't seeing that you're curious about, please reach out. This is the perfect time to do so. We are in the process right now of tweaking the survey, of deciding what new questions we want to ask, or if there are any that seem superfluous that we want to get rid of. Your voice is not just heard by taking the survey. You can come and reach out to us right now. If you're a practitioner, if you're a vendor, whomever, now is the time. If you're saying, I really want to know, we had a question recently on not just what benefits were offered, but which benefits were being taken up. What are people using? Those are great kind of questions. We would love to continuously tweak the information. We did that with AI a couple of years ago, going beyond just going, what AI is, are people using AI are they using their own AI? Are they paying for the AI? Who's paying for the AI? What are you using it for? Why not? If not, and really that's the kind of stuff we love to do. I mean, this is fascinating for us and hopefully useful to you.
I think what's interesting, Cliff, is that, we always try and make it shorter and it ends up being longer. And we know that. And the last couple of years have been so funny because we haven't got nearly the kind of, like, sometimes there were people who were really mad at us, like, this took me so long. And we get those comments, but not as many recently. Part of it is where people are able to kind of sort of go to the sections they feel they want to go to. So we've done a lot of navigation within the survey. But I do think that, we're also seeing, as part of this conversation that people are hungry for information right now, right? Like it is. So there are a lot of questions that people have. And, it always makes me smile when someone says, you had just the data I needed to help me make some sort of decision, right? And it's a big part of, and then the other side of it is I have people all the time who ask me on the end, because I'm managing this thing for over, 10, 15 years at this point, and I'm now stepping a little bit out of it. You and Tammy are taking a pretty big lead in sort of running with the questions and what's happening. And I get questions all the time. Well, why can't we look year over year at all the data and just dump it into AI and make it all tell us what it's doing? And the first thing is that we change this survey slightly every year because of the market changing, right? And that sort of mapping every year is a very manual process for me, you, and Tammy and the team, is that we've got to go back in and say, what questions and options did we add every year? And that's probably the hardest thing sometimes to see when you've looked at this research. If you don't see it year over year, is how it's grown and changed. Makes my heart feel good that, because of the fact that we're willing to sort of do that extra heavy lifting, we get something that is so relevant to where the market's at every day. So we were supposed to be doing a shortened version of the show today, Cliff. You need to get into the data and the content. I know we're all in, obviously, as you guys can see, we've been talking about the survey, we've been talking about the data, we've been doing a lot of that this week, but there is a lot of news going on, Cliff. We got to get to it today.
A lot of good stuff. Yeah, this is what happens. You get two professional talkers.
Yeah, exactly. And they're both with not enough sleep right now.
Woke up too early and you're going too late.
Yeah.
So here we go. We got some exciting news. This one is one I'm going to go ahead and, New Year's resolution. Don't forget things like this. I missed this one last time we were up. But Coursera is in talks to buy Udemy. That would be a $2.5 billion firm. If everything goes through, I believe that it would be an all stock deal. So they basically just have to get through the scrutiny that comes through public companies going through that. So pretty
really right. Like I think people, when they look back at this started out with back in the day. I mean, again, aging myself a little bit, but it was just, the only thing I hear was sort of like there was Khan Academy, there was the YouTube, there was online university stuff. There, Coursera and Udemy grew out of that age of what we called multimodal, I think it was, online content, right? And I think what we're seeing, at least happening, this is very similar to what we were just talking about, is that as the market has started to sort of say, content is more accessible or it's easier to create, right? These organizations are having to rethink their strategies, or they have to combine assets. Coursera and Udemy started out as just public-based content providers, but they had over time gotten quite large corporate entities. They have corporate elements which you can buy into those. And we did not see, I think, I always talk about organizations like Skillsoft that has been around for many, many years. This is a really hard space to be in for a very long time, is content creation and content delivery, right?
Yeah. Both of us have been in this space before. And What's interesting too is I've actually used both of these products. Came out of long time in academia, and then any sort of certification. Coursera I knew very well. Udemy I've used a few times, taken a few sort of certification type programs through them. And that, as you said, that transition to a sort of corporate sort of model isn't as simple as it might seem at first. And it is pretty interesting that they're both, or I should say the new merged company really believes that the future will be in the corporate side, and specifically they're targeting AI training, something that we've brought up quite a bit. But yeah, you need to compete with basically existing players that are already there, right? That have not just the name recognition, but have a long history of being tailored specifically for the corporate world, and aren't as, but they do bring this. I was going to say they're maybe not as used to this sort of picking and choosing rather than kind of always on LMS, but the world is changing, as we said, with more remote workers, with a workforce that is a little more comfortable with the sort of style of sort of selecting and picking courses based on what is needed at the time. I think that the scale alone of the merger, or the acquisition, I should say, tells you that that's a serious bet that this is something that will have a future going forward.
It will. And I think the one thing I recalled in my last conversation with I want to say it was Udemy, but it could have been Coursera, might have been one of them when we were and it wasn't the State Church, it was probably a little bit before that when we were doing some briefings, but they were very clear that their largest growth opportunities were actually sitting outside the United States at that point in time, with the large global audience upskilling, particularly in areas like India and Indonesia area, islands like where I'm at right now, right? That seemed to be a place where they were getting a large amount of their sort of growth opportunities, right? And so it'll be interesting to see that with a combined company with combined assets, is that going to continue to see some of that growth as well? And that is, I think, the opportunity the market is really looking at, which is how do I make content and information that is vetted and valuable? Coursera is very tightly connected with the universities and degree programs, more so I think than Udemy has been. And how do I make sure that the content that people are getting is accurate right now, right?
Exactly so. So speaking of getting people the correct information, data, it's rough. It's rough.
I'm waiting to hear that. You're having a rough time. Morning or not, not your purview, Cliff. Definitely so.
Phenom. This one's very new. This one is certainly not been on the back burner. This was just at least at the time of the recording, just a couple of days ago, if not yesterday. Phenom has acquired Included AI. That's the name of the company.
It's so hard in the press release. I kept thinking they were saying it is included. I'm like, no, it's actually called Included, right?
Yeah, that's what that pause was they've acquired a company that is named Included AI. This is like the Who's on First skit all over again. Not Phenom is very included. Hard to read. Phenom, as we mentioned earlier, they are definitely a larger, full talent suite with full HR capabilities. Included the company has been an analytics platform that is a little broader reach. They've had analytics basically for business, I believe, security and IT analytics. So not too surprising, I think, based on what we've seen all of last year, of more consolidation of that sort of data into one platform to help make people decisions.
Yeah. And I mean, Phenom is one of the original sort of went from what I would say is new talent skill management, sort of bringing them into organizations to what is now called the talent intelligence category, right? And they've really leaned in heavily in AI and analytics over the last, I think if I recall their last user conference or something like that, they've launched like 200 agents or something like that, right? So, I'm not surprised by seeing that they are continuing to double down on that conversation. I think the question becomes, with someone like, Included, How does this help them sort of move out of what we would consider is the point solution, which you and I both know that point solutions are having a tough time right now, into more of a platform conversation. And that was a big part of, I think, the last conversation we've had with them, is that they are truly wanting to be a talent intelligence platform, right? With a very big focus on that people analytics component. So I think I would assume this is really moving more towards that, right? And they're doubling down on that conversation, because the one thing that we do know is to be a platform, you got to have good analytics and reporting, right?
Yeah. Now here's the segue. So you mentioned the platform, and that's something you've been talking about for the last couple of years, this idea of a platform cluster. Moving beyond whether it's a point solution or a suite to you're going to have an anchor or a central system that you use. It could be all types of different systems, depends on what's best for your company. And you're going to pick and choose those that work best with that sort of central and anchor system. So one of the artifacts of that is that you really have to think about the security and privacy when you're having that bidirectional data transfer, and you're going to use the reason you were doing that is because you have systems that you've got through probably the marketplace or something like that through your anchor system that are vetted and secure and conform to all the laws, especially when you're dealing with global organizations. That had to be part of the thought process between this announced acquisitions, which was ServiceNow, to acquire Armis for $7.75 billion with the B. So these are both, massive acquisitions in terms of financial. But I find this just directly related to something else you've been talking about, Stacey, which is the bring your own AI. Because when I will admit, I didn't know much about Armis. I apologize, Armis. You weren't on my radar. We often sort of joke.
We can only watch about 2,000 custom vendors, so if it does get a little bit.
Yeah, we often joke about what even is HR tech. Is it just everything now? Yes is the answer. It is. And so I was watching a video about Armis from their co-founder, Nadir Israel, about what they kind of do fundamentally, right? So they are security, platform security and all that stuff. But what was interesting when Nadir was going through it is he said, fundamentally, we're about asset discovery, unifying all those assets. So everything that is going into your system, we need to know about it so that we can provide security to it. That has to have been a huge impetus of ServiceNow's decision-making, because they are not alone in realizing that if we're going to be in this new world of people using all of these devices and all these different systems, all of these different agents, we're going to need to have the best security we can have, which might explain, I think, somewhat the decision to purchase such a large dollar amount into this company.
It really is. I think, what we're seeing, companies that are connectors, API, security, privacy, all of that get much bigger multiples right now than what we had seen even just 6 months, a year ago, right? Workday just bought Pipe Dreams, which is nothing but a bunch of connectors, and with an MC. Not going to say it right. It's the MCU. Is that the thing we had talked about last time, Cliff? Again, we're both. It's late, but the idea is that you've got these connectors and the security around it, and the fact that you built them appropriately. And it sounds like the most fundamental of thing that we're dealing with, right? Like, haven't we been talking APIs forever? But this kind of goes beyond the API conversation into the security of the data and who can access it and where it can be accessed, right? What I think is interesting with the ServiceNow conversation is, we've been working on this area of sort of provisioning of tech and provisioning of licensing and those kind of things with some organizations that we've been working with. And it seems to me like ServiceNow is really trying to own that entire space of who's accessing what inside your organization and who has priority, especially when it comes to data and information, but also to sort of users and eventually agents in that conversation, right? And so, they are really vying to be that central location, and I think they're making a real big play for it, right?
Absolutely. I will try and remember in the notes what that is. Microsoft just recently added in a bunch of the capabilities. MCU, I know, is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I know.
It's not that, no. Right. Yes.
It's not that. It is something very close to it, but I'll think of it, you're right, both of us on lack of sleep. But I'm also just happy to say MCU because I think that's driving our SEO just by even mentioning it. So, Disney, get at us. We're happy to join in.
Yeah, it's the MCP service. That's where
MCP. There it is.
I was just not thinking clearly as it
Oh,
heads
no,
into
I'm
midnight.
at MCU. Our ratings just went right through the roof. Well done.
I love that idea. That's
We're
great.
a Marvel
All right.
pod.
So anytime for those of you who are sitting out there and go, "God, I can't remember all this. I just can't keep it all straight." It's okay. None of us can. We're all acronyms are coming up before we can get them figured out. We're all in this together, folks. We're figuring it out.
Oh.
We do understand what we're talking about. Sometimes it's just the actual language that I can't always keep
No,
together.
that's exactly it. And that's part of why we're on this show too, is to help sort of hopefully sort out the news and make it less confusing, because talking about acronyms, we're about to get into some alphabet soup when I describe this next one. So bear with me. I will say what all these acronyms stand for, except for okay, just listen and I'll do my best. All right.
Yeah.
So this is, I believe, the last of the acquisitions. G&A Partners is acquiring Ethan Allen HR Services. So G&A Partners is a CPEO, basically just a certified PEO, right? The IRS certified PEO. It's just like being a CPA, right? It's a certified public accountant. They're a CPEO. So they will, both of these are in the PEO and HRO space, HR outsourcing, basically small businesses. Some of you already know this, but the rest of you, small businesses often will just say, look, we'll go to outside firms that handle all of our HR stuff. Someone else does the payroll, just like you might do with bookkeeping. They'll do that, the HR services. So that's what G&A Partners, Ethan Allen HR Services, I was actually much more familiar with. There is somewhat regional, if you know them, but in the sort of New York and Northeast area, Ethan Allen's very well known as a PO and HRO. So a whole lot of acronyms, but basically this is a acquisition bringing up two of the largest North American PO and HRO firms.
Yeah, and PEOs are much more of a term we oftentimes see used in the United States. It's used in a couple other areas, but it's a very U.S.-centric term because it's basically co-hiring. It's kind of, you're both kind of hired. You both have some ownership of that hired resource. Outside the U.S., that's oftentimes not allowed, and that's why we see the growth of EORs, employer of record models, which is the tech, and she completely hires them, and they are responsible, and then but it's more like a contract role that you're sort of doing, and you're basically contracting them to an entity. And that's a growth thing, that model that we're seeing outside the United States that kind of compares at some level to the PEO model here. What I think is more interesting is that we are seeing both of those kind of things being looked at, acquired, and really sought after from both investors and like private equity firms too, right? Like it's a highly desired business model when it works well, right? Very regional on some levels too, because it does have a lot to do with like local and regional compliance that you've got to follow. But it is something that we are seeing growing interest in. And our data is definitely showing that although the PEO use hasn't gone up dramatically, it's still like that 13 to 14% in total. We are seeing bigger companies hold on to PEOs longer, which is a different dialogue, which basically means you've got more people under a PEO umbrella, because usually you kind of tapped out, I think, Cliff, around, depending on who you were talking to, it always kind of ranged between like 100 employees, between 300 employees, where it became less lucrative to go through a PEO versus hiring your own HR employees, right?
That's right. And I just realized after I said I would explain all of the acronyms, I never said what PEO stands for. That's a professional employer organization. When you're taking the survey, don't worry, we write it out and we explain what it means.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
but now I think we're seeing organization. I talked to an organization just the other day who had 5,000 employees. Now, granted, they were using it for a component that they had acquired, and it was just easier to keep that acquired component on it. But we are seeing organizations at a much larger size keep hold of PEOs for longer these days, right?
Yeah, that's right. And the types of services are expanding for PEOs, really for any of them. And the software is becoming more sophisticated, I'd say, so much so that some of the POs that we know of are kind of going direct to market. So you're going to see some names like, well, I don't even know them. They might have been around a long time, just operating under a different model. You know, as for all the reasons Stacey has said, there's a lot more interest from a lot more different types of companies. I would say somewhat related to an expanding number of people who work from home or work remotely, which has increased our appetite for global workforces, but also that brings with it high levels of complexity in compliance and regulatory environments. That also comes from the advent of AI and the different rules. Having an organization that handles that, or at least some of that compliance risk, is another reason why I think we're seeing more interest in these types of organizations.
Yeah. And the other thing I think is, as we're sort of moving on to some of the other stories, Cliff, but I would just I think we're probably going to get some updates probably in the next week. So maybe at the next call on the Insperity Workday relationship. That had been announced previously, but we're going to get some updates on where that's heading as part of that PEO conversation. So this is even the big vendors are getting into this play, sourcing them through these PEO conversations, right? Again, like you said, that direct to market, some of it is just bigger partners connecting, leveraging their technology. This is definitely a space where I think you're going to see more and more of that, right?
Absolutely. So let's talk about some of the people news that we've got. We've got some pretty interesting ones. Jeff Carr will now be the CEO at Atana, a well-known learning and development company. So I feel like whenever we do the people ones, Stacey, you usually know the people involved.
I know Jeff very well, very much from I think our first connect was probably maybe at Saba back in the day.
Oh, wow.
Those of you who remember Saba.
But Jeff Fluent, he was at Zenefits. I think that's where I would have met him. Inkling, and then Docebo, which, going into that L&D role, the learning development.
Yeah, but I didn't know Atana as well. So I think that was the one where I know Jeff extremely well. And he's been a long-time executive in this market. He's the one thing I think as you notice all those names that Cliff had mentioned, Jeff has I think a history now of sort of coming into, sometimes I would say is organizations where they need to take that next step and they need someone who's got that kind of big company experience, right? And so, he's been known to be that person to get them through in the next couple of moves. And I'm waiting to kind of see, I'm sure he'll come out with some commentary, but Atana, it looks like, is the workplace learning within behavioral intelligence. Anytime someone throws the word behavioral in there, it always gets me, Cliff. Like, what does a behavioral intelligence mean? So I'm really intrigued to hear more about what Atana is going to be able to do. Is this a learning creation content kind of? It's basically it has a lot of different things. It looks like it's providing. Or is it sort of LMS plus? I don't have that data at my fingertips. So that's one of the things we're going to have to get for everyone, right?
Yeah. Whenever I hear that, because of my psychology background, that tells me it's a little more heavily focused on training, adding behaviors, right? So that's usually observable behaviors or anything like that nature. If you're trying to improve those sort of directly observable skills or anything like that, that's usually where you see those sort of terms coming, right? I need someone to be able to do this particular task. So you use behavioral-based training to say this will be a change in those behaviors. It doesn't have to be something as obvious as, operating a forklift. It could also be people skills, right? Using more open language, sort of working with people in a more collaborative sense, those type of behaviors. Those are the types of trainings I think of when I hear those terms.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of compliance here on the Atana site, but we definitely need to get a briefing on this one, Cliff, and we'll bring back more news as we get it. And I'm excited for Jeff Carr. I think he always brings something special to these organizations with his experience and his background, and we'll keep you posted on what's next for him, right?
Yeah. And then something we saw quite a bit towards the end of 2025, which is CEOs moving towards stepping out of their CEO role and becoming chairman of their boards. We have two right now. We've got Tony, I think it's Jamu, but it could be Jameis. So Tony, if you want to reach out and correct me, I usually try and find these things. At Oyster, will now become the executive chairman of the board at Oyster. And Didier Elzinga at Culture Amp, doing the exact same thing, stepping away as CEO and becoming chairman of the board while we're waiting on this sort of transition of who's going to be taking the reins at those organizations, both of which are ones that we have tracked, both Oyster and Culture Amp. We have tracked for some time. I think what was the statement you just made as you talk about taking it to that next level? I think both of those companies are looking probably to make that leap, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I know Culture Amp is one I probably know more so. I mean, Oyster we follow because of the work they do on the global front, very much so, across other things as well. But in at Culture Amp, Caroline Rawlinson, who is the current COO and CFO, is going to take over the CEO role.
Okay.
While it looks like Hadi Moussa, I'm not sure I'm saying that, will be the CEO at Oyster, and it was previously the senior leadership roles at Kupal, Coursera, and Deliveroo and Airbnb. That's an interesting one because it's a very consumer driven kind of group of backgrounds for Hadi. I'm interested in seeing sort of what that looks like for them, right? But very consumer driven. Culture Amp, we've known for many, many years, really has made an impact, I think. And you hear it all the time. In conversations I've had recently is that, people are like, boy, there was such a sort of a zeitgeist that was started around Culture Amp, trying to create a change in the idea of performance and engagement and where that market was heading, right? And so I'm hoping to see Culture Amp kind of step back into that mode as we rethink what that looks like from an employee-led market to an employer-led market, which is where we're at right now. And I anticipate we'll be at least for the next several years up until people start to hit the wall of just simply not enough people in the workforce to do the jobs, which we're expecting about 5 years from now. And that means those companies that have really focused on engagement and how that engagement drives performance might have to flip the script a little and talk about performance and actually how that really is focused on the levers, and that includes engagement and other things, right? I think we're just hearing that language a little bit more. And Culture Amp, I think, is in that mix of those, right?
Yeah, it's pretty also interesting, just as a nice little callback that Hadi Musa was at Coursera
Yeah.
earlier. Yeah. So very interesting. And then this is the last one is a change. Also another one where we're kind of moving around what's considered HR tech and what isn't. But Amberly Dressler, a good friend of the show, has left iSolved and is now the VP of Corporate Marketing at Conga. Conga handles commerce and contracting at very large global enterprise. They have, I don't know the percentage, but a good percentage of the Fortune 50. They do contract price quote, the CPQ. They do contract life management, CLM. I told you you'd be getting some acronyms today.
Yeah.
And document automation. All sort of areas that are sort of sitting on the side of generally operations, right? And that sort of, and the finance side. But that we're seeing more and more in the HR tech space. Amberly has been, I think she was on our sister podcast once, right? Is that right?
Oh yeah, she was. She was on she was on our HR We've Got a Problem. But we've really been working. I mean, it's been interesting because I met Amberly, would have been, I think, 21, or it might have been 2019. It was either right before or right after COVID. As iSolve was sort of moving into wanting to start to build an individual brand where they had oftentimes been sort of private labeled underneath other brands, right? And I'd be like, hey, we keep getting this company that shows up in our data set called iSolved, and I needed to come over and find out more about you. So we were, I think, one of our first, not the first, but one of the first analysts in it sort of talking about the iSolved organization, right? As they were starting to sort of come out of that sort of new role that they were creating in the market. And so it's been kind of a fun journey with Amberly over the last 5 years of getting to know her, watching her grow what was probably one of the most amazing sort of analyst relationship programs, right? With a large organization. I mean, people oftentimes don't know how large iSolved is, with almost 160,000 individual companies who use that solution, right? But and then seeing her grow and move into new roles. And so I always love that. And I do think that the new organization she's moving into, those contracts and documents, we're seeing that as part of the HR sort of finance mix conversation, right? On a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah. And that growth that happened under Amberly and iSolved was just unbelievable, right? It's like the two of them kind of growing together as they came up. She will be with Jeff Webb, who's also at iSolve, now at Conga, and Cecilia is also at Conga. And Amberly there will be doing the communication, creative content, channel marketing, events, web and SEO. So just like an iSolved, a very large amount of responsibility, but just like an iSolved, she will do excellently, and we look forward to keeping you updated.
Yeah, and I think you're going to, for those of you who are still working to connect with iSolved, I think, again, just to let you know, Lindsay Philantres, I think that is how I say Lindsay's name. She's sort of taken on sort of a currently sort of a more global role in the marketing space. I know her and Paige Lefevre is also handling sort of what's going on the analyst space. And so they're handling it. Pragya, who's their now COO, which always, I again, love seeing her leadership and the work that she's doing there. Is really taking the reins of what's happening at iSolve. So we're going to continue to watch what they're doing. I don't think as much as we're going to miss Amber Lake completely, I think you'll still be hearing a lot from the iSolve side of things.
I can confirm Pragya is at the very top of the show. We mentioned those organizations and those people that want to go over the individual comments and look at almost every single response. Don't worry, we keep them anonymized, and really understand what customers are looking for, what's working and what isn't. Pragya is definitely one of those people. She comes from the product space. She understands it very well. So when she can see that, she can kind of see both the sort of market and the product perspective and bring it all together. And it's just a straight shooter. So yes, under her leadership, iSolve will continue to, that vision that they've had. So some of the sort of broader stories, we did see one that you flagged for me, Stacey, which is a U.S.-based one. The Department of Labor in the U.S. has allocated $98 million to fund apprenticeships or pre-apprenticeships, I think they're calling them, in construction, manufacturing, IT, information technology, and healthcare. I'm now just saying every acronym all the way out, now that I've promised I'd do so. So this is through, I think, what's called the Youth Build program. That's all one word. Providing support for people between ages 16 to 24. So basically, what are we talking about? We're talking about investment in what we see, what the United States sees as high growth industries, ones where there are not as many skills. I found that pretty interesting because there was another story that came out that was sort of a opinion piece that I thought was pretty interesting, but it was making the point that HR tech is becoming part of national security, right? That HR tech is quietly, I think was the title, HR tech is quietly becoming a national security asset. And one of the points made is that the shortages of skills is a geopolitical weakness, right? Mm-hmm. That skills are just as vital as any other natural resource because you're dependent on things like not just cybersecurity, but the ability to manage supply chains and manage the people that work in those. So with that in mind, I think is probably why the United States would put this funding towards these sort of programs.
Yeah, and this is a really close one to me. My dad was in high school for over 20 years almost. He taught electrical engineering and electricity at a local high school, what was considered our trade environment in our high school in the little town I grew up in Ohio. And I watched him combine these worlds of high tech at that point in time, which was robotics and CNA transfers and all that stuff, with sort of what used to be kind of the old idea of electricity and electrical, which was the how do I wire a house kind of thing, right? And I watched him just change. You could see the light in some of the kids' eyes as they started to realize that these skill sets could really not just sort of give them a job, but give them, a vision of what the future looked like and be part of that future in a very, very real way. And so I've been very, active in a lot of this over my years. I have a lot of, if anybody's interested, I'm just going to put this out there. Myself, Sarah Tracy, who's a good friend of mine, are putting together a couple panels around this conversation. Let me know if you're an event and you'd like to have some of these conversations, because I'm bringing to the table both the universities, the grant people, the labor contracting conversations. I think that, we are talking a lot about not enough AI skills in the market right now, right? And we're talking a lot about not enough sort of soft skills. What we aren't talking about, which you and I talked about even on the last session, was this idea of this mixed hands-on skill sets with highly technical skill sets, with the judgment needed to assess what's going on in AI, because that's coming into those roles as well, such as nursing, welders, those kind of things. Mm-hmm. A lot of that conversation here internationally, obviously, not surprisingly, I had a great conversation this week with someone who ran quite a bit of work and talent management for a large German organization, which was global around the world. And she said it was one of their biggest issues was finding people who have those joint skills. And so I think this is something we're going to all watch. I don't think it's as simple as we're bringing manufacturing back to the United States, which sometimes that gets wrapped into, but I do think it is a real issue for our global capacity to grow, right?
Yeah, that's really well said. And I actually didn't know some of that. Look at this. So about your father, that's really interesting.
It's an important part, I think, of who I am. If you ever know my DNA, my dad was a teacher, and I said, well, I love that, but I need to go someplace where I am not dealing with children every day.
Yeah, here we are, Stacey, managing me. So.
I know. Talking about children, as we wrap up, do we want to talk about the coworker and Claude?
Yeah. Speaking of managing somewhat rambunctious or, I was about to say people, but managing a service that is still learning. You get the idea of AI coworkers has come up again. This was from Full Stack HR post that was made about working with the new Claude Cowork. That's the name of the product from Claude, which is itself a product of Anthropic, the company that makes probably the biggest competitor to OpenAI's ChatGPT. All of which we, by the way, track in the survey and in the report now because it is part of HR. So here we go. So that's why we're kind of interested in this, especially because of the way that this is being thought of as a coworker. It's right there in the name, and people are using it as such to basically say, here is some work, help me get this done, not as just summarize my email, but really, take all of this and work with me like you would with a coworker, So pretty interesting because this is a concept that we've seen before, this idea of thinking of AI as a coworker, as something like that, rather than just a research or summarization tool. And, there's sometimes people go too far one way or the other, right? We've noticed that some people will say, yeah, this is just my employee to the extent we had one last year where someone was sending messages or what was it? They were treating an employee in a non-HR a loud way, an AI employee, I should say. And then some people who just are sort of saying, it's of no value and don't even want to use it as a tool because of all of the other misgivings they might have about AI. But at the same time, what we try to do is track what are people actually using it for? What is the real use beyond the hype of what you might hear and get through it? And it's pretty interesting that we are seeing these stories of basically use cases. I think those are probably the best way to think about AI. I shouldn't say the best, but one of the ways we like to do is to track the actual use cases. What are people actually using it for? Not what is it capable of, but what are people doing with it?
And I think it's, the work being done, sort of assessing these tools from an HR perspective, it's really important work, right? Like, I think that, what we've seen here in this example, and we'll put the link in there for everyone to see, right? But Johannes, who kind of runs that Substack and does that work, I really appreciate the work that he's done because I think, he started this and I think it's now kind of his own organization, his own business to kind of go through that demo kind of model. The video alone was informative to me. And he's very aware that, hey, a lot of this doesn't work the way it should work, but it gives everybody an opportunity to see kind of what the opportunities are through the eyes of HR, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And again, I like to see it when it is kind of in this space of not too much hype, right? Not saying, oh, this is going to solve all my problems, but also at the same time, not saying that they're just rejecting it out of hand because it doesn't seem to, conform to what they're trying to do with it.
I'm paying attention, Cliff. I will say I am trying desperately to see if I can get. We have some late breaking news. Don't think I'm going to be able to get it in time to be able.
Oh, is this about a certain person that also worked at ISO?
Oh, and we wanted to be able to highlight it today, but I can't because I don't have the details yet.
Yeah, this is often the case, listeners and viewers, that we have information, and that's again what we're trying to do here as part of spilling the tea is making sense of it and giving it to you as fast as possible. but at the same time, we're often under NDA. But that does allow us to at least sort of make sense of things so that when we present it, we're not stumbling over our words. That would never happen here.
We'll put a link to that news story. So we'll just give you a hint. It's going to be someone who has been in the industry for a long time, who we love, who's got great product background, who's joining another small but rapidly growing international company. And so that updated news will be in our notes, Cliff, when you put it out. I think
if you want to try and figure it out, there's a connection between Amber Lee Dressler, who we mentioned earlier. I want to see if you can figure it out. So this last story is one that is kind of come up. Speaking of the AI and the issues that can arise from it. This is a story that is a broader story, but I think is important for us to understand from the compliance risk issue. So there's not one particular worthy of note. I think anyone that follows the internet will know this. There's been a number of stories about Grok, which is the Elon Musk, I don't remember which particular company it falls under, but X or whatever. That is their AI program is Grok. And it has been sending out child sex images. I know so not only that, but also deep fakes, a number of other things. And there's no real regulatory body that is handling this. So what is HR's role of this? Sort of who's accountable? And you're going to see a lot of ideas as we are sort of waiting to figure out how this is going to go. So there was a pretty good story that, again, we'll link to that Newsweek did that kind of asked a few different legal experts about the role of HR or the role of legality for organizations when it comes to using things like that. So basically the idea is there responsibility? And most of them agree there is. It's just an idea of where this responsibility lands, right? Whether that is in the platforms that host it, whether that is with the organizations that are responsible for the hardware or the software, the individuals, if it can be tracked down that way, and how that's all playing out. There's a understanding that, yes, there is accountability, there are various laws in place, and as well as things that are going in. But I think it's important, if I'm going to get on my soapbox here a little bit, to understand that historically, globally, regulation of the internet has been, censorship of almost any kind has almost always had the opposite of its intended effect. I'm not going to be, I'm not a free speech what do they call this? Absolutist. But at the same time, the Take It Down Act, which is one that Newsweek references, or any of the attempts to hurt Section 230 actually will end up having the opposite effect, because larger companies will then be the only ones that'll be able to put into place the sort of quote unquote moderation features that are there. And so it will not stop this sort of thing from happening. What would be more helpful is regulation against the sort of individual companies and programs that allow this to happen, rather than these sort of ones where it wouldn't allow sort of you and I to host our own blog that might be critical of the government, for instance, or something like that. So that is my idea. I think I would urge everyone to, yes, understand that there are legal repercussions, but also to understand that, at least in the United States, Section 230 and any of the ones that are equivalent are actually give us more protection than repealing them would do. So there's my little opinion part at the end.
No, it's good. I think people have to understand that. I do think on the news, there's a media and ethics law class that I oftentimes reference that I took when I was going through my journalism days, right? And a big part of that was understanding all of that legality that you talked about, and also understanding that most of those organizations are held accountable if you're a media and law, if you are considered a broadcast entity that's on public airwaves, right? You had to be held accountable to that you gave factual information, right? And that you could be sued for non-factual information, right? And I think that's, so if it could be proved that what you said was incorrect, which is some of the things we saw happen through the elections over the last couple of years is that statements that were made that were unfactual could be taken to court, right? I don't know where that falls in this mix, as you've talked about, right? When this is an image and not, can we get to that idea of a factual item, right? Because opinions are different conversations, but facts are another piece of that, right? So I think we're going to continue to have these conversations. They're important dialogues to have in our market. They're really important on the HR side because people bring these kind of things to work in the tools we use and the conversations we have and the stuff that ends up just in the general conversation, right? And we have to be aware of what it is in the HR space. So I know it seems like something a little bit tangential from HR, but we've got people who are using Grok as part of their tool sets. We know that it shows up in our data, very small part, but some of them are using it for HR, right?
Yeah, that's right. And here, my brain's going to get one last ability to coalesce this all together. This does actually matter because when you think about the ability to take down what we would call, in this example, non-factual information, right? Then it becomes a question of who's deciding what the facts are. And again, this kind of goes to the danger because if there's, again, a criticism of your organization or a criticism of the government that you're under, if they decide they don't like that and they decide that what you said is non-factual, even though perhaps you've seen a video and you've seen with your own eyes what is factual, then their ability to make those decisions rather than your own means that they would have the ability to censor you and it would, again, have the opposite effect. So you might be thinking, okay, well then what does this mean? How do I know what's truth is out there? Well, that is the business we're in here at Sapient Insights Group. That is the reason why we're not, I'm trying to brag, Stacey isn't, when we talk about how big our data set is, that allows you to see it. We are very upfront about here's the data, here's the amount of people that take it, we go on and on about the cleaning and the vetting and the validation process. So you can trust the data, you can trust what you see and allow you, we might say this is what we think, but allow you to have that information to help you make your own decisions because it is becoming a more and more valuable resource to have data that is validated, that you can trust, and that's what we're trying to bring to you.
Well said, Cliff. And I know you got to get off to some meetings, and it is now hitting 1 a.m. for me here in Bali.
I'm so sorry.
So with that being said, as important as all the topics are, and since we don't have the title of our dear friend who we wanted to highlight today, but we will have that in our notes. I just want to say thanks to everybody out there who listens. I mean, really, Cliff and I enjoy doing this, as you guys can tell, and we do have fun with it. And we do appreciate that. We get all the comments about people listening to us. I had a couple people even here where I'm at in Bali this week say, hey, I listened to you. And that's fun because I'm halfway around the world and these are non-English speaking in some cases HR leaders who are talking to me, and that was always a good feeling, right? I think Australia is one of our largest listener bases internationally, isn't it, Cliff? Right?
That's right. Yeah. Hi, everyone there. Well, we're both about to be in your hemisphere.
Exactly. Yeah. So as we wrap today, just a couple of other big pushes. Just a reminder, as Cliff has said and noted, is that our big full report is out on the marketplace. If you want to access it, there's a couple of ways. One, you can buy it, download it directly, or you can become a member of Subscription Center. It's another good way that gives you access to all the other data and the research that we have available. And then ultimately, if you are one of those who have participated, but your link isn't working or you didn't get it, let us know. We know sometimes that, things drop into your inboxes or into your junk boxes and you don't see it. So please let us know. Secondly, also, if you are wanting to know more about all the things that Cliff and I are doing, as well as the whole team that is out here, including Terry Zipper, Susan Richards, and all of our amazing team behind the scenes who are getting the work done, please go to our website, sign up for our newsletter. And that will give you all the updates on the research launches, where we'll be speaking, visiting how you can participate in the survey so you do not have to pay for it, which is a really big win. And basically, that is by signing up for our newsletter. You get all of that access to it. Be sure to listen to our sister HR Huddle podcast, HR We Have a Problem, hosted by our CEO, Terry Zipper. And these HR Huddle episodes, if you do like these, please be sure to like, post, say something about them on our various platforms, including the work-defined environment. And to stay up to date with immediate breaking HR tech news and get all the behind-the-scenes content, you can follow us at Sapient Insights on LinkedIn and Instagram. I had someone today note that they had seen me on Instagram, Cliff, and I was like, that is a wow, because a lot of our stuff gets reposted on Instagram. I'm like, I don't know what I'm saying on Instagram, but I hope it's good, right? Thanks, Cliff, as always, for pulling all of this together. Thanks to our production team, including Brand Method Media Group, who helps us produce our podcast run by the amazing founder, Kelly Kelly. To our marketing team that includes Summer Ilano, Caitlin Diamond, Cole Harris, Linda Galloway, I know does some work. We have a whole team behind the scenes who make all of this work. We really do appreciate it. And as most importantly, thanks to our listeners and our community, we couldn't do this without you. That is it for this episode of Spilling the Tea on HR Tech. We hope it's been just the brew you needed. Hopefully like an Indonesian version of tea right now. So nicely brewed, just the right temperature to start these engines running this week. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another pot of boiling hot HR Tech updates and insights. Thanks, everyone. Bye.